You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to Beast Over Burden.
We're back.
It's Tuesday. You're listening to us. We're here with you. We're really excited. I have an energy drink for this episode because I'm going to go lift right after this.
Me too. I have espresso.
Yes. Nice caffeine. It's before noon, just barely. So I'm feeling safe about this.
Yes. I have noticed, by the way, on that note, two things with caffeine. I've actually been trying to, as we've discussed, not go past noon. And I've also been trying to have the first cup a little later.
As in, I know like the Huberman rule is like 90 minutes after waking. Is that what you're going with?
I think 90 minutes. I rarely make it the full 90, but at least try to give myself a full 45 minute to an hour.
Yeah.
To let I think it's the adenosine flush through, because apparently caffeine blocks those receptors. So the whole afternoon crash comes in. If you block those receptors, let the adenosine float around, and then once the caffeine wears off, you get tired, the sleepies.
Yeah, I really do think it makes a difference. And it's tough when you wake up on those early mornings and you have to get like right into your day.
I know.
The only thing you're looking forward to when you get out of bed is coffee, and then you have to wait a long time. But it really does seem worth it. Like have some water if you can, go on a walk. But
yeah, seem to crash a lot less.
Yeah, I like to drink water before I have my coffee. You are pretty good at drinking a lot of coffee between that time frame.
I prefer a high density coffee consumption morning. 3 to 4 shots of espresso, I would say minimum.
It must be minimum 4 because you don't usually do a single.
Well, lately I've been intentionally making quad espresso, and that actually slows me down a little bit. I notice the double espresso, I just can hammer a double espresso. Like the first one, I don't even notice, basically. And when I've been making quad espressos, I'll actually take my time with the first one a little bit more. So
amazing. Well, especially with this new hack of using the non-fat Fairlife milk.
Skim milk lattes.
So it's basically a protein shake.
Exactly. Yeah.
Delicious.
Probably, I should count it out. I'm probably getting 20 grams of protein, maybe. I don't know.
I've been measuring it and it gets so foamy. So you get like a whole bunch of foam. You can get so much foam with like less than a half a cup. So yeah, I'd be curious too.
Yeah. So tell me about menopause.
Okay, we'll get right into it. Surprise, we're going to talk about menopause. Don't turn it off. Don't turn it off. Keep listening. Keep listening. This is interesting, I promise.
For all the guys out there, you're going to want to know this stuff. Plus, we're also going to talk about andropause, which is not just
specific to
andropause. It's apparently apparently guys go through it too. And it's referred to as andropause.
Yeah.
Which I only recently found out because I was checking out in the grocery store and I was with Clara. She just started absolutely she was lost her mind laughing and pointed at this magazine cover and it had andropause in it. So
I'm pretty sure I've experienced andropause.
She was like, "Is that why you're so cranky, Dad?" Yeah. They named a whole pause after you. Anyway, so.
Well, the topic came out of, I think we probably had one conversation about it, which means our Instagrams picked it up and then our Instagrams just started getting totally flooded with menopause tips and strategies, especially as it pertains to lifting, which sparked some interest that timed up with our Block Learning Club, which is where we do like a 6-week, I guess, time frame of studying and presenting and learning whatever we want to learn, whatever we can learn about a certain subject. So I picked menopause.
Book club for strength nerds is really what it is.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be a book. But yeah, it's literally anything you want to talk about. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, the first rule of book club is it's not actually a book club.
Oh, just hang out and drink wine. That would be
basically
more fun.
Yeah. So it's just it's a book club, except what strength nerds would hang out and talk about.
Yeah, totally. The Instagrams totally scared me about menopause. It sounds horrible. I kept wanting to figure out what the heck is going to go on because I can only hope I get to experience it because that would mean I'm alive. And at the same time, it also seems like you just get robbed of things that used to be easy and used to be fun. And I just want to kind of learn more about it, know when it's happening or not, and then, know how to prepare for it and get through it. And that's important for me, for my clients, for our clients, and then for like the wives of our clients, because you might be living in the same house with someone who's going through this.
And the husbands of our clients.
Right. That's what I meant. Yes.
Yeah.
The others.
It's a broad category now.
Yeah, it
Partners.
is. Yeah. But anybody who has to go through this with anybody, and it lasts a long time.
I remember having a conversation with my mom about it, and she was talking about how she was basically a different person for a solid decade.
Yeah.
Or at least she felt like in hindsight, she recognized it and it came up in conversation of expressing gratitude towards her husband for kind of going through that with her. That kind of like the inverse of what we were talking about with the dad's episode, and it effectively turning into an identity shift. I think that process, menopause for women, is very similar. It's just this fairly radical change that happens in a relatively short period of time that kind of shifts how everything operates hormonally. Seems like, at least based on what your report is. So I'm curious, what did you take away from it as you dug into the details?
So my first question was, what causes it? And, what's the triggering event, so to speak? And it has everything to do with changes in estrogen levels that are being produced. So as women get into the ages of, it's like 35 to 45 years, that's when their regular estrogen cycle changes, which leads to changes in their menstrual cycle. Once that stops, then you're in menopause. But, what is the deal with estrogen is where I eventually had to end up starting. And so estrogen, it's a hormone, so it's a chemical messenger. It signals important functions. And it's mostly produced in the ovaries, but there are also some production in adrenal glands and fat cells. So it's actually a hormone that is found in both females and males, definitely more prevalent in females. But it plays a really key role in reproductive health and triggering the beginning of females' reproductive years. And it's what turns us from like little bean poles at 11 years old to having like curves and hips and boobs. And it's like, has a lot to do with that whole phase of life. I called it the cool, hot girl next door of hormones because it seems to create a lot of that kind of energy. But it also plays a really key role in bones, in our cardiovascular system, and even in our nervous system. So that means how our blood sugar is regulated, our cholesterol, bone and muscle mass, circulation. It has a lot to do with our brain function. So it is pretty prevalent everywhere. And that's why when it changes, it is such a global effect, because there's always a variation in estrogen levels during a regular cycle, and that goes up and down a regular cycle. But that cycle lengthens and it gets irregular, and over time, the amount of estrogen production changes. So whatever we got used to for the previous 20-ish years, that really starts to change, and we see it show up in a lot of different parts of our body and in our thoughts and in our behaviors.
Yeah, I mean, we see that with the microcycle of the monthly menstrual cycle, that there's some memes, or not even really memes, but that you're kind of hormonally operating in 4 different stages throughout that cycle. It's almost to the point of being...
Yeah, when you get one lady, you actually get 4 ladies.
So you can spend 20 years getting used to the 4 different versions of those microcycles, and then now you hit this, it sounds like...
And you get stuck with the one.
You go through this decade-long, for some longer even, I think, the period of time in which that microcycle goes out the window, the thing that you kind of based your whole rhythm of life on, and then it settles into this whole new thing that is totally different than what it's been up to that point.
Yes, quite. And, as in all of this, it's different for people. Some get to experience this to those extremes. Some have, fewer symptoms of it. And so it's definitely different for everybody. Like for women who have to have their ovaries removed, they go into early menopause. So they start experiencing this, much earlier in life because they're no longer in their reproductive years, which is another way to describe menopause, is no longer able to produce eggs or reproduce anymore. So that can be an early triggering event for some women.
So the trope is the hot and cold flashes and mood kind of changes. Beyond that kind of superficial trope, what else did you learn about how the body changes, or, specific to strength training, strength and conditioning? What have you learned that influences you as a coach and as a lifter that you're preparing yourself for?
Well, so as estrogen decreases, some symptoms are weakening of the bones. That's when you get hot flashes, headaches, trouble concentrating, fatigue, and trouble sleeping becomes really big. You get a lot of mood changes, irritability, depression, and then sex drive changes. Because estrogen is the hormone that makes sex, really fun and feel good. And when it gets lower, it's less of that. And so it's like, no you're moody with all of this. Yeah. So specifically as it pertains to changes in energy levels and sleeping, I think that really leads to a change in your activity levels. And I had heard before that, when you go through the perimenopause phase, which is that period where your regular cycle starts to change, and then get into menopause, you gain weight. And what I've understood to be behind that is that, where estrogen encourages our bodies to gain weight in hips and breasts, when that decreases, we get increased fat storage through our midsection instead. So that is a contributing factor. And I think more of what seems to be linked to body composition changes that trend towards more body fat is the change in energy level and the increased difficulty perhaps to maintain muscle mass. So those, I think, are the most important considerations as it's associated with coaching and being a lifter is, how can I prepare myself in terms of habit physically, and then habits on the nutrition side to make sure that I know how to train in a way that encourages muscle mass and maintenance, and then how to eat in a way that does the same. Because if you're moving less, that means you're burning potentially fewer calories each day. And it could be very minimal, like 50 to 200 calories per day, but that is enough over time, over years, to change your body composition to have more body fat than you did before. And if you're more tired, it's going to be harder to do anything about it. There's also a change in how your body is synthesizing protein. It wants more protein. And that, to us, when it gets to our brain, is I am hungry. And so there's also sometimes this increase in caloric intake because your body is craving protein, but we can't really separate that just on our own process. So we eat more, and it's not always the instinctive reaction to eat more protein. So knowing that as you go through this phase, you're going to want more protein, you're going to need more muscle mass, and you're going to need to maintain your energy. The things you can control are making sure you go into it with a lot of muscle mass, you go into it knowing how to lift, and you go into it knowing how to eat a lot of protein, because you're probably going to need to eat more protein as you go into that phase of life. And so if you go from, only eating 50 grams of protein a day to now needing to eat 170 grams of protein per day, that's a significant change. And you might end up eating a lot more, fats and carbohydrates to go along with that if this is a pretty new transition.
Along with, I imagine, a whole host of psychological, emotional, and social sort of dynamics, kind of new identity front, are all trying to be figured out while your body is behaving in a way that feels totally different.
Yeah.
So how you might go out to dinner or how you might plan your activities might be changing.
What clothes feel good.
It's a lot of variables all sort of dynamically changing.
Yeah.
For over a course of many years.
Yeah. Usually about 10 years.
What sounds like a challenging way.
Yeah, it does.
It's not like it's getting more fun and easier. All of it sounds like it's getting less fun and harder to do all the things that you want to be able to do.
That's how it was sold to me. Yeah.
also has a lot of similar symptom overlap with how you hear decline in testosterone for guys.
Well, that's what andropause is. Usually, it doesn't happen with men as precisely in that phase of life in those specific years after 45. It can usually happen over a longer amount of time or start earlier. But it's the change in one of the most vibrant hormones.
Your sex hormones. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is interesting, though, that the prescription that you described to both prepare and minimize the impact or the pain or minimize the symptoms, or at least do the best you can to address the symptoms, is pretty much the same prescription we give to anybody at any stage of their life.
Yeah. It's exactly the same as what I'm doing right now. The change is, I think, understanding that it's going to feel different than it did before.
Right.
Things that used to work to give me maybe a quicker change may not occur that way. And when my energy level changes, I'm going to be like, okay, I understand where that might be coming from. And I think one extra maybe difference is just to make sure that when you have low energy levels during the day, you're not up around walking as much, doing as many things as you normally would. That's when people become more sedentary going into the 60s. It is very important to maintain the day-to-day activity, day-to-day movement. So that's where the step count, I think, gets really important, is how much am I on my feet moving around each day? Because that little stuff seems to really matter. But yeah, other than that, it's lift heavy and eat protein.
The rate of change piece, I think, is really important to keep in mind from an expectation setting perspective. I was thinking about this today, that the younger and more testosterone, and it sounds like more estrogen for women, and earlier in your training that you are, the faster and more aggressive you can be with making changes. So, the bigger caloric surplus you can have with less protein, and your body will be able to more efficiently synthesize protein without adding extra body fat, and you can just pour it on. That's why you can just kind of, the easy noob gains when you're a 17-year-old.
Yeah, super responsive and super resilient.
Yeah. Whereas the older, less testosterone, less estrogen, further into your training, the less efficient you are at adapting or responding to the stress, the longer it takes to recover, and the smaller the changes are that you can handle. The intensity of the dose probably has to be smaller, and the amount of recovery you need for the equivalent amount of stress also increases.
Yeah.
Which is frustrating. Again, not fun.
It's very frustrating. But I think it's so important to go into it strong. Being 35 and having a lot of muscle, and going into your 50s having a lot of muscle, that is going to be a different landscape than going into that age range untrained, where your bones are weaker, you're more tired, and you're just climbing up this much more difficult hill. So I think it's really worth it to prepare, honestly.
Muscle mass just keeps coming up over and over again as the fountain of youth, the organ of youth, if you will. I should probably fact check this to have it more concretely defined, but I was looking at some research that was showing muscle mass as the number one predictor of survivability for all cancers.
Totally believe that. Yeah.
So independent of the type of cancer, your probability of surviving goes up if you have more muscle mass, because apparently something like a third of cancer deaths are from wasting away. I can't remember the specific condition, but essentially your body just consumes itself and can't function anymore. So the more muscle you can go into a scenario like that, better probability you have getting through it, better your metabolism is, the better you are to be able to maintain your activity levels.
Insulin regulation.
I mean, it's just, the list keeps going on and on and on.
I haven't found a downside.
I think the only downside that I can come up with is the same as, any metric that you try to aim at that kind of overrides the quality of life goal that you're ultimately trying to pursue, and leads you down the dark side of then, oh, okay, well then I need to do everything I can to add as much muscle as humanly possible, to take every possible
Right.
drug and eat every possible calorie to put on some insane amount of muscle mass and look like a early 2000s bodybuilder.
Yeah. So it's the insert X at all costs.
Exactly. That's about the only downside I can come up with. But if you're using an intelligent strength conditioning program and you're doing the things that you can to intelligently add muscle mass gradually over a long period of time, I don't see any downside.
I don't either. And it's fun. Like, if you also know how to have fun with your training, then you are bringing that into that phase of life too, which I think is super duper important. Like that ability to create that space for yourself, have that in your routine, know how to do it, know how to make changes, and know how to still connect with your body physically, super important.
Yes. That's the part that I think we've dropped the ball on. Sometimes I'll think about it as Claire's going through middle school and high school. I think that financial literacy and physical education literacy are the two things that just don't seem to be part of the average American education experience. We should know how to do those things. We should know how to build muscle mass. We should know how to incorporate strength training into our lives and do it in a way that feels good and supports our goals and is reasonable and sustainable. But we don't learn those things. It's unfortunately still a thing that most people don't have access to or even aware of. And like you said, they feel like their bodies are almost out of control of what their bodies are doing. I hear it all the time, especially with people that are aging. Or I think from everything you've just described, it sounds like it's just 10x harder for women post-menopause to do all the things from a physical lever pole kind of perspective, whether it's muscle mass or bone density or energy level. Everything just gets harder. And if you don't know how to manipulate those variables going in or have the head start like you're talking about,
it seems like it's going to be that much harder. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the understanding so that you can be kind to your body when all that's happening. And for your partner too, whoever you're choosing to spend your time with at that point. So like their understanding as well. Like I think it's going to test like conflict resolution. It's going to test patience. And it's going to, I think, ensure or really encourage you, as I took it, to like create some really secure relationships that can withstand that. So that you get to that point on the other side. I know you've met people who are like this, who are just like, what I loved the most about this part of my life is just not giving any more hoots about anything. Like, that sounds fun. And I think having some understanding and some grace with yourself is a really important kind of milestone to achieve at that point.
Well, I think it's maybe put slightly differently is that the hoots are just redirected. I think a lot of the hoots, we're back on the hoots. A lot of the hoots early on are very externally focused.
Yes.
Like, I need to look a certain way to gain approval from whatever, or because I'm, just seeking approval from other people. I think those hoots go away. But you just listed a whole long list of things where those hoots should be going, which is building muscle mass, maintaining mobility, maintaining body composition, maintaining energy levels, maintaining your relationships. Like, these are very, very worthwhile hoots to give.
These are important hoots.
I don't think it's that you don't give any hoot. It's a redirection.
Selective hoots. Yes.
Become more intentional with your hoots.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thanks for making it to the end of this episode. I appreciate you sticking with us, and I hope you found it really useful. I found it really helpful to learn more about this. And maybe we'll learn more about andropause as time goes on. That'll be interesting.
Yeah. It's coming. I'm probably in the middle of it.
Love it. Well, if you think this would be useful for someone, we would really appreciate you sharing it, and we'd love a review. And we look forward to being with you next week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.